and that is actually more real-time captioning. And then we have another type, which is called Typewell. And that kind of captioning is more of a summary of the content, and there's a little bit more of a delay with Typewell captioning. And for that reason, we suggest that cart captioning happens mostly within the classrooms. And Typewell could be used with just some of the classrooms, particularly with technical types of material, specifically math. So we'll talk a little bit more about those options in a bit. Now, if you were to pick captioning as a service that you would like to have, I'm sorry, I see a few people falling asleep, and maybe they're just closing their eyes. So I would just like, maybe if you could tap those people and ask them to wake up for me. Hello, over there, hello. Okay, great. Now, I grew up with deaf people, and so my parents are deaf, my grandparents were deaf, and my great-grandfather was deaf. My aunt, uncles, cousins, and you name it. Our family is very deaf in a sense. So if I don't see your eye contact, it's really hard for me to be able to engage with you and continue my presentation. So I would really appreciate your patience with me in that aspect. Now, if you choose to have captioning services in your classroom, you still will have an interpreter in the classroom as well. The information would all go through the interpreter through the captioner, just as if you're seeing right now in this presentation. And this is cart captioning and not Typewell that is occurring right now. Okay, so we already mentioned the two types of captioning, and now we have two types of delivery. So the first one is what's pretty much occurring right now. There's a big TV screen that has the captioning on the screen, or if you so desire, you can actually bring your own laptop in the classroom with a very small microphone that can be used with the interpreter. So that would be mobile captioning, and you can choose whichever is more comfortable and which one is your preference. If you choose the mobile captioning, there are a few specific requirements, like needing to provide your own laptop and so forth. So
technical requirements we can tell you later.
And we can tell you a little bit more about those technical requirements at a later time. Like I said, we do have standardized or standard interpreting. But here, the interpreters will actually look for the time to find ways to support your language development. The interpreters may of course, let you navigate and let you be more independent with those decisions.
And they may back off.
And they may back off in a sense. There is a new service that we're developing currently where we will have a deaf interpreter in the classroom. And I hope you all are aware that we do have deaf interpreters within the interpreting field. Are you aware of that? I hope that you all do know about that, because here we do have many deaf interpreters. So we're developing a new service for you to have a deaf interpreter in the classroom. And the interpreter may not be interpreting everything, but they may be there, the deaf interpreter may be there to clarify some maybe cultural information or specific terms. And that service may actually fit people who have some skills with learning the language, American Sign Language. So if you are not fluent or don't have a lot of American Sign Language skills, this service may not be for you. We're hoping to provide those services in January. Right now we're still developing this part of our services. You have a question? Come on up. Yeah, you can stand there. You don't have to come all the way up to the front.
In high school, I didn't have it all the time. We used C-print in high school, which is kind of different than this card.
You were saying that's your preferences? You do like C-print?
No, I'm just saying I used that in high school, and it's different than this. Yeah, this is word for word.
Any other questions or comments? Come on up. You can do it. I know. Listen, I know you don't really want to come up to the front, but that's what happens here. So we have to kind of get used to it. I'm sorry, but that's just what we do here.
So do you have to apply for interpreting, or do they just automatically have it?
Very good question, and that's our next slide, so we'll talk about that.
Juniper presenting. Okay, and so we'll go forward into the next slide. There it is. Requesting services. Now I'm going to ask Darian to explain this part, actually, if you would. Darian speaking. So I wanted to answer your question over there. Hey, get Khalil, yeah, to answer your question about how to request interpreting or captioning services. In Jumpstart, we're going to give you some time for you to have some experiences with captioning, with interpreting, and get a sense of whether you need it or whether you are really still going to need it in the fall. And so around the second week of August, we'll be looking at I'm sorry, I'm not in a good spot for lighting. Okay, I want to make sure I'm lit so everyone can see. So right around the second week of August, I'll be meeting with all of you to discuss your preferences. Some of you will say, no, I don't want the services, don't want them, don't need them. And some of you will say that you want them, and then we'll make the request for you. But keep in mind, in a perfect world, we wish we had all the interpreters in the world available to do everything. In truth, we have a limited number of interpreters to provide to students. And we know that many of you are able to engage with the language. We're not using interpreters, so if you're able to, that's great. But for those people who feel like they still haven't learned enough, they need some time to adjust, we can provide this for you. So, we want you to be able to use the services, but not abuse them. They're expensive services. If you're using CART and using interpreters, you need to attend class. And, that's part of the contract that we sign when you come in to request services. In October, maybe you come to decide, you know what, I don't need the services so much anymore. You can drop them. You can drop them at the end of the term in December. And so as you're learning ASL, we can adjust that, okay? Now, the way to begin it all is with me. I'm your first step. We'll have a meeting in the second week of August, and I'll let you know what's going on then. And you'll also be meeting with the representative from the interpreting department, as you see here, Juniper, and we'll be talking to you about figuring out what kind of service is right for you. When that's done, I'll be meeting with academic advising. And we have academic advising here. Representatives from there, stop. You will all be meeting with your academic advisors at that time. They're the ones who are going to create your schedule. Now, how many of you have already had your schedule taken care of for the fall? Okay. By show of hands, I see a few of you have. That's because of the work of the academic advisors. We'll be meeting with you. They'll be meeting with you in August to determine what classes you're taking, which will use interpreting, and which classes you think won't have interpreters. Let me see, which of you think, which classes do you think won't need interpreters at all?
Verbal class.
Oh, a verbal class, something like that? Oh, okay. Well, actually, a great example of a class that you're not going to have interpreters in is ASL. Right, that's a great example of that. So this fall, when you're taking your ASL classes for credit, you will not have interpreters. Other classes can have interpreters requested for them, okay? All right. So, and during that meeting, we'll be talking a little bit more about the form that you sign off on, the contract, And if you continually miss class without informing us, without informing academic affairs, we'll release the services and stop them rather than waste the time and expense. If you're not going to be serious about attending class, why should the interpreters be showing up every week, sitting there waiting when they could be elsewhere providing services? So that's the purpose behind you signing a contract regarding these services. If you're sick, something happens with family, we understand that life happens, but you have to let us know and let the interpreting department know. Now, for non-academic activities, I'm not exactly the right person to respond to that. Thelma, do you want to? Okay, so as I said, I focus on the academic components. Thelma Schroeder is here. She's the Director of Academic Advising and Tutorial Programs. So I'm going to have her talk about how you get services for non-academic activities.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to see you. Now, the non-academic activities would be like if you wanted to have an interpreter to maybe, I don't know, go to see a play. Maybe you need an interpreter for that. So you would have to get a signature to be able to go to get that interpreter. I think it's Mary Key. Well, actually, I'll let you all know who that person may be to find that information about non-academic activities. Okay?
Darian speaking. Right, we don't want to overwhelm you with too much right now, but we'll first concentrate on your courses, getting all that set, and some of these other issues will come up as we go along. Juniper speaking. Where to start? Okay, now, because as Darian mentioned, these services are costly. And we don't want you to take that to heart and feel burdened by it. We simply want you to be aware that they are costly services. So we want to make sure that anytime that you don't need those services, that we're aware of it. And we're not there. That's the bottom line. And we want you to communicate with 4 people anytime you have any sort of change, thing like that, where you're not going to be attending class, a change to your class time, and a day when you're not going. There are 4 people that you need to inform. Your instructor, GIS. Now, I'll give you the full email address for that momentarily. Juniper Sussman, that's me. And now my official title is interpreter, lead of Emerging Signers Program. So anytime that it involves emerging signers, I want to be kept in the loop. And the last person is your academic advisor. So those 4 people. I suggest you just set up a distribution list in your email so that every time you can just hit one button and have all 4 addresses populate the message for easy distribution. If you're not going to show up, if you want to stop services, anything like that, send those 4 people the message. Now, I have a question from here in the audience. Oh, GIS? Oh, okay, so you're actually going to send it to gis.confirmations@gallaudet.edu and send me a separate email at juniper.sussman. Oh, okay. The question was actually about GIS and what the acronym stands for. I apologize for that. It stands for Gallaudet Interpreting Services. Okay? So again, if you're going to be late, anything like that. Now, if any needs present themselves, then you're going to email these 4 people. Now, there is one exception to this. If something goes awry with your interpreting or CART and you're unsatisfied with the services you're getting, in that case, you're just going to contact 2 people in particular. gis.confirmations and juniper.sussman. It's very important that we want to be able to provide this service to you, but you also have to be responsible to help us be sure that we're providing it right, the best we can. Okay, everybody stand up, 15 seconds, cut it loose, and then you can sit back down.